podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Each week, Joe and I bring you our unfiltered takes on the highs, the lows, and everything in between, following the Blues from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes. Final whistle has literally just blown, and it was Crystal Palace 1, Chelsea 3. A good win, and for much of the game, a decent performance. I have to say, when it went 3-0, and I was sat there watching it thinking, oh, this is good. I'm going to be able to just relax and actually enjoy a Premier League game for half an hour, which, let's face it, very rarely happens. Very rarely happens, and it hasn't happened much this season at all. And then obviously when Wharton got sent off, I was like, even better. This is going to be great. And then somehow Chelsea managed to almost make a game of it at the end. But 9 minutes added on, I was like, oh God, we couldn't, could we? We surely couldn't, but no, it was fine. And actually a really, really important 3 points. I was thinking about the game a lot this morning, looking at the league table, obviously after Liverpool lost yesterday, thinking, well, this is massive. It would be, we haven't won consecutive Premier League games enough this season, full stop. We haven't done it for a while. And having won last week, you looked at that and thought, it's massive to win today. Go above Liverpool, pull ourselves away a little bit from that sort of mid-pack that it is, and don't get dragged back into it. And yeah, however you do it, get the 3 points. And it was probably the best performance under Rosenior so far, wasn't it? Certainly far from perfect, but enough good bits for you to be happy. Where to start? Badish Hill after 7 minutes with what could have been a key moment of the game. He's come out of the game himself okay, I guess, but he just fills you with nerves, doesn't he? Every time the ball goes near him. I don't know if it's just me, but I'm just so nervous watching him in a Chelsea shirt. And the mess he made of that after 7 minutes, Mateta goes through, has to score, and to be fair, Rob Sanchez makes a brilliant save. Could have been a disaster. The nervy moments. The first half of the Palace were the better side. Didn't think we did a huge amount until Palace gift Chelsea the ball, but it's still 50 yards from goal, 60 yards from goal maybe, on the halfway line. And Estêvão, just wow. Wow, what a player he is. The intelligence of him at 18 years old to know to run across the defender, to use his strength, his pace, and then finish like he did. The kid is special, isn't he? He's got everything. He's got absolutely everything, and nearly did it again. Minutes later, on his right foot, will be disappointed. A lot would say he should have passed it across to João Pedro. I didn't actually mind him shooting. We saw him do it against Barcelona, but just love watching him play in a Chelsea shirt. And obviously with no Palmer in the side today, you were looking at it thinking, where's the magic going to come from? And it was Estêvão. Superb. Second goal, obviously João Pedro. I want to talk a little bit more about him, and I might do that in a second, but I thought it was a brilliantly taken goal from him. Quietly, as I say, some of his numbers are still, I think we look at him, I think most of us look at him and think, hey, you want a little bit more from your number 9, but at the same time, I do rate him as a player. And I'll talk through in a sec the goals he scored this season. I don't think the numbers are quite where we want them to be, but the importance of the goals are worth talking about. And it was a really, really good finish. Kept himself onside, cutting on his left, and did exactly the right thing. Exactly, be selfish, hit it on your left foot, hard and low, make it difficult for the keeper. And that was huge for us at the time. And then the farce that is VAR, I mean, I think it is a penalty. I was shouting at the screen saying, come on, that's a penalty, surely. It's harsh for the defender, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't hit his arm, it's a goal. And why did the referee watch it for so long? He was watching it. I felt like he was just watching for about 2 or 3 minutes. He was watching the same clip that we were seeing over and over again. And then the poor Palace fans, as he comes on the mic and says, good news, it's accidental. Bad news, it's still a penalty. It was like The Office. For those who know the clip, you're still thinking about the bad news, aren't you? It was unbelievable. I felt for the Palace fans. And Enzo Fernandez, clinical from the spot against Dean Henderson, who, by the way, has got an amazing penalty record himself. He's got an incredible saving record. So I was a little bit nervous when I thought about that. But Enzo Fernandez quietly very effective from the spot for Chelsea. And then, as I said at the start, just a little bit disappointed. Obviously, we run the changes at that point. I kind of thought, can we be greedy especially when they went down to 10 men? Can we get people like Gittins and Delap on and greedy for their goals? But actually, we didn't do anything. And yeah, like most, I was probably relieved when the final whistle went. A good day for us. I want to talk about João Pedro then. So he's got 9 goals for the season now. So he's on track for what? If he carried on at the same pace, end of January, he could hit somewhere between 15 and 20 goals. I mean, if he got to 20, it would be a very good season for him. I don't know if there's any argument about that. But if he hits 15, it's par, I'd say. But what I wanted to look at was when he scored his goals, because I think it bears talking about something that Didier Drogba and Diego Costa, and we talk about them a lot because they are the best strikers that Chelsea probably had in Premier League history. Certainly when we've won the leagues, they have been the main men. What I think they were both really good at was scoring important goals. They weren't necessarily stat pad strikers where they're scoring the third and the 3-0 win and just notching up goals. And neither of them really renowned for sort of scoring lots of hat-tricks and doubles, but they scored important goals. And I wanted to have a quick look at when João Pedro scored his goals, because I just had this feeling that they have been important. And basically all of them have been at least at important points in the game. So I'll rattle through these quickly because I know it's not the most interesting podcasting, but West Ham was his first of the season. That was the equaliser. We were 1-0 down to go 1-0. We obviously then won the game 5-1. Fulham, his second goal of the season was the opener in the 2-0 win. So again, very important goal. Spurs was the winner in the 1-0 at Spurs, a lovely finish. Wolves, he gets the second, but in a 3-0 win, but again, important goal. Atalanta, it was the opener, so an important goal. Obviously, we went on to lose the game, so it's less important, but for him, it was important. And then the recent goals, you got that Newcastle equaliser. He did so well for to make it 2-2. He scored the opener against Villa. He scored, obviously, the opener last week against Brentford. And he scored that second today, which was, for me, a really important goal in the game. So he's not been prolific. I think we all want a bit more from him, but he is delivering at important moments. And I think we talked about Delap on the last pod. Joe described him as a baked potato, I think it was. And he has been disappointing. And as I said, we all expected, I think, a little bit more from Delap. And we probably want a little bit more from João Pedro. But I think he's done enough to show us that there is a player there, and you'd want him in and around your squad. And in many ways, you'd want to see what he'd be like with a Delap at times or with another striker, because I think he's got a lot of different attributes that's very useful. So yeah, I wanted to give a shout to João Pedro today because big goal for him. I thought it was a good performance. He was given man of the match on Sky as well. And yeah, he did well. So good win. I'll hand over to Joe. Above Liverpool, 2 wins on the spin, no clean sheet, but yes, that is a good Sunday's work. Over to you, Joe.
Yes, Liam Rosenior, give him the job full time. Oh, yes, we have. I've forgotten about that. I thought he was an interim again. Yeah, it's a result. It's a good win for Chelsea. They're probably one of their better performances of the season, if I'm honest. Palace are a little bit depleted and they are going through some issues with their manager and one or two of their players, but they still gave a good performance today. They still came and fought and battled hard. And as Chris said, yes, he was fortunate to be going into the break at 1-0 because Big Baddie, once again, tried his best to give the opposition a goal. And Chris has gone through that. But yeah, it's just a big area of contention for Chelsea. And Chris is right. He kind of played okay after that. He didn't have a terrible game. He was quite physical alongside Mateta. And I thought him and Trev actually marshalled him not bad today. And as he said, I thought the back four as a whole were fairly organised. They looked much more defensively rigid and sound. There wasn't too many cock-ups. I felt as though we were passing the ball out a lot faster, getting it through into the midfield a lot quicker. And yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for Rob Sanchez and that good save, you just never know. It could have been a completely different story. If Palace go 1-0 up and they get their tails up, who's to say they don't go and really go on and make us look stupid? But that didn't happen, and we managed to keep it 0-0 for a fairly long period. And yeah, it was a wonderful goal from Estêvão. I mean, I think it's quite underestimated. He's got, for a boy of such a young age, to play in this league is so physical and so demanding. The way in which he took that ball 60 yards, he had to dribble all that way, think about the one-on-one all the way whilst he's going there, hold off a player that was chasing him down. And then once he gets in the position, you ask the question, can you finish? And boy, oh boy, can he finish? And that was a wonderful strike, a really sublime finish. And yeah, I don't think that goal should be underestimated. It was, I think, for prime strikers who've been doing that for 5 or 6 years at the highest level, they would still say that was a difficult chance. And I think the Brazilian was just superb there, and a goal that kind of we really needed. And you felt as though if we could get ourselves in front against Palace, they might crumble. And I think for a big period they did. I felt they looked a little bit out of ideas, much like Chelsea had done recently, to be honest with you. And okay, once the second goal went in through João Pedro, you were through in the worst of Palace, because even though Chelsea haven't been prolific in front of goal of late, we just seemed like we had the bit between our teeth for that spell just before half time and that spell just after. And like Chris said, when the penalty goes in, and I won't go through the VAR check and stuff, because for me it's a stonewall penalty. And by the way, the defender does nothing wrong and he cannot get out of the way. It's got nothing to do with that. But obviously the rule is, if the ball hits you on the hand and it's going in the net, or you make a goal line save, it is a penalty. So the referee did spot on there. It took him too long to figure it out. But what I will say is he came to the right decision. And as Chris said, Enzo dispatched it really, really nicely. It was a shame we managed to look worse against 10 men than 11 men, but that is just the way it goes sometimes. I felt as though Chelsea were probably in keep ball mode. They knew it was 3-0, didn't need a fourth goal. I would have liked to have seen them try. I felt as though we didn't really try and get a fourth goal. There was no clear opportunities after we scored our third goal. And I'll be honest, the substitutions killed the game for me. And I realised they've got to get minutes, they've got to get their time on the field, and you've got a big squad and you want to rotate players in and take your slightly tired players out. I get all that, I understand, but it had the adverse effect again. If say Palace had gone and got a second goal from somewhere, I didn't see that Chelsea side hanging on, if I'm honest with you. And yeah, there's just too many players that come on that pitch for me that just look a little bit lost. And Gusto sometimes plays really, really well and sometimes looks so disinterested. And I thought when he came on, he was terrible. And you might go, well, he didn't really touch the ball. It's just his positioning, his lackadaisical manner. He got beat one-on-one once or twice so easily. You think, mate, you've got to be better than that. You've just got to be better. We're playing Crystal Palace. It's not the best team in Europe, you know what I mean? And your big Liam Delap up front, who, again, just doesn't really offer anything. You think what João Pedro did today in his 60, 70-minute period, how well he played. And Liam just comes on and sort of trots around and he jogs off everything. And you're thinking, come on, just show a bit of something, show a bit of fight and desire. But he just doesn't seem to have it in him at the moment. Then obviously you've got Jamie Gittins on the wide area and, again, just passes it backwards. It's just uninspiring. And he's just got to do so much more. And people might say, this isn't meant to be a negative thing. It's showing people that, and trying to explain to people that if you're a substitute and you've been sub for most of the season and you get opportunities and you come on and you just sort of go through the motions, how on earth can you be selected to start? In your 15-minute cameo, I'm talking to Dapke, Gittins, etc., you've got to show something. You haven't got to score. You haven't got to assist. But there has to be something within your game that makes the manager or the fans say, do you know what? This guy needs minutes. And when we were crying out for Estêvão, my friends and whatnot were saying, he's got to play. He can't keep sitting this boy on the bench. He has to come on. And Estêvão hadn't pulled up any trees. But when he was playing, he was showing signs that he could be a quality player for Chelsea. And I just feel as though there's a lot of players that come on for us who are supposedly, when you think Delap's 30 million, Gittins is 56 million, that's a lot of money. Like, most people would die to spend £86 million on 2 players, and you'd expect to get a lot more for your buck. And I just feel we have too many of these players in the side that when they come on, they actually make the team worse, not better. I think Chelsea as a whole today can be pleased with their day's work. They were very professional. I thought Enzo and Caicedo and Andres Santos. Well, Santos was fantastic in the midfield. He's so composed. He gets around the place. He covers ground like Caicedo in some ways, and you feel like he's learning from the great man. And again, I've given Caicedo a little bit of stick in the last few weeks. I don't think he's been himself. I really don't. But I think when you have dips, and Chelsea have had quite a big dip of late, all through sort of November, December, and even January's not been great at times. You sort of go, well, you can't go missing for 2 months of the season and sort of expect to be considered one of the league's best players. Of course, Caicedo is one of the league's best players. There's no question of that. But consistency is key, and I feel as though his form dipped, and maybe there was something to do with the manager. Maybe there was more going on behind the scenes than we don't actually know. It's a really funny one, because when you change managers, it upsets the apple cart one way or the other. You either like that manager or you don't. You'd have been pleased he went, and there's ones that said, oh, but he keeps playing me, so I quite like him. And it all comes down to that at the end of the day. But I just feel as though Caicedo, much more like himself, obviously gets himself a yellow card early doors. He certainly shouldn't have had a yellow card for the other foul that he made. I tried to make a lot of it on the TV, but it was just a foul. And I think sometimes even the media, they sort of forget that you are allowed to make fouls in games, and that all done for yellow cards. I felt a little bit for Adam Water, his 2 yellows. Like he said, he made 2 fouls the entire game and he got yellows for both. And I feel, again, probably was a little bit unjust. 1 yellow would have been fine. I think he should have carried on. That's just me being fair. But yeah, Santos, going back to Santos very quickly, yeah, he was just such a fantastic watch today. I think he's going to be, given time, I think a really good player for Chelsea. Someone that we can trust and rely on. And I really hope we see more of him. And I hope we don't go back to kind of just Enzo and Caicedo week after week after week, because I think it helped him. I think it really helped him in there. And it's sort of a midfield 3. I know Enzo plays further forward and stuff, but I feel he just unlocks somebody else to go forward. And I feel we have a bit more defensive solidity there. And yeah, I said on my voice note before the game I wanted to see Andres Santos start. I wasn't sure he would. I didn't think he would, actually, if I'm being brutally honest. But it was good to see the manager actually picked him. I thought Rob Sanchez had a very decent game. Again, he made a good save for the first attempt which ended up being Palace's goal. Great low diving save, and he obviously made a fantastic save with his feet to stop Mateta scoring. But with Rob Sanchez, he claims a cross midway through the second half and then runs out and nearly runs out the box with the ball. And you just think, what's fucking wrong with you? Like, what is actually wrong with you? I've never ever seen a goalkeeper do that. And I'm talking kids' football and men's football, women's football. I've never seen a goalie run out the box with the ball, basically. He's very lucky not to do that. But yeah, it just beggars belief, and this is what happened. Imagine if he runs out the box there and gives a foul away and they score from it. He's just like, you're a fucking idiot. But look, he got away with it. He was quite lucky that the Crystal Palace forward nudges him in the back and obviously goes down holding his face and his knee and his ankle and gets a free kick. But I thought Rob had a good game, but he just has these moments in matches where you just think, what is up with you? Like, he's like his head wobbling a little bit. Very, very odd. But Chelsea can be certainly pleased with their night's work. They played to a game plan. They were effective. They were very much in the game from the beginning. They didn't give Palace too many opportunities apart from the obvious ones we've already discussed. And it was great just to see some smiles on faces, because we've been deprived of that over the last few weeks, I think. And yes, we've had some wins under Rosinia, but like they say, they've been particularly drab games, very boring to watch. And what you would say about Palace today is they didn't sit back in a low block and and try to defend the game out. They actually did come at us. They did come with a bit of a game plan, and I sort of admire them for that. I know there'll be those that say, well, just sit in a low block of 5 and another block of 5 and Chelsea won't go anywhere. But they wanted to win the game. They weren't content on getting it from set pieces. Although, yet again, we did finally succumb to another set piece, and yeah, the mastermind, Bruno Cueva, earning more of that hard-earned cash. But of course, I am very pleased for Liam Rosenior, pleased for the backroom staff, and all the players for coming up trumps today with a good performance, a good 3 points, 3 nicely taken goals. And I would say they're going to celebrate with a nice beer, but knowing the modern day footballer, it's probably a can of Monster. So enjoy that, boys.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Why does every recipe I try need 18 ingredients, including a jar of something paste I'll never use again, but will sit in my fridge for 9 months? I just want dinner in the oven, fast. That's why I love Blue Apron's new one-pan assemble and bake meals. They send you fresh ingredients that are already chopped. All you do is put it all together and bake. That's it. No chopping, no weird leftovers, just delicious, easy-to-make meals. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Okay, so for my second voice note this week, I thought I'd jump on here before Chris, because I'd like to get his opinion on a couple of things, the way I see it as it stands currently with the Chelsea Football Club. Now, there are some things that annoy me, like no front of shirt sponsor and that sort of thing. And I think Chris and I will discuss some of this stuff in person together over a live conversation. But there's some just things that have been nagging at me for a little while, really ever since Rosenior took over, because I think Chris and I both smelt the fact that Maresca was probably off. The moment he sort of didn't come out for his pre-match press conference against Bournemouth, there was obviously a lot of chat in the weeks leading up to it, or maybe not weeks, but the games certainly leading up to that moment. And it didn't surprise me that I don't think he was sacked. I think he was genuinely allowed to leave because the club weren't very happy with some of his comments. And if the rumours are true that he's pretty much left and given up most of his salary just so he can get out and be in a position to manage another team, I think that's true, and I think that's commendable in some ways for Maresca. But equally, I just struggle with seeing Liam Rosenior in the dugout at the moment. And I don't want to criticise him because he has done absolutely nothing wrong, and he has been put in this position because we as a club just seem to be, I just think, completely in a mess. I don't really know what we are anymore. I think this has been the realisation that in the last few weeks and months, building to a point where I go, I'm not sure if we really want to build this team to win something. And with the way the club is at the moment, the new rules that are going to come in place very, very soon, and Chris will go through those details, I'm sure, in a bit more detail as he has the facts in front of him. But basically, as I see it, the way that Chelsea can basically garner some cash together is to buy players and sell them on. And I think my biggest concern, and I'd like to know if Chris thinks this is something that might happen or could happen, or if he thinks it's complete pie in the sky. Now, there's also been a lot of talk about Cole Palmer not being linked away with the club. And I know there was this story about him being slightly unhappy and all the rest of it. And you can look into anyone's demeanour and kind of go, oh, he wasn't pleased about something in the club. Obviously, he scored his goal last week, Palmer, and he looked miserable with sin. A lot of the media and the press have all picked up on that, and there's stories being written about him. And I don't think actually for 1 second that he is particularly unhappy. I kind of know this through a friend of mine, but you wonder, and I wonder what Chris would think if Chelsea were faced with a bid of, let's just say, let's be fair, let's be kind of keep it in realistic terms. If Chelsea were offered £120 million in the summer for Cole Palmer, and it doesn't matter who the club is, Man United, Man City, Real Madrid, Barcelona, whoever, and Barcelona probably couldn't do it because they'd probably pay some Bitcoin, but you know what I mean, the big powerhouse clubs, if they really wanted to come in and spend that sort of money, would he be willing to go and try something else? Because I look at him as an example and say, he's a player with ambition. I look at Estêvão and I go, he's a player with ambition. He's not there for the money. I feel like Cole Palmer would play in his local park today if he was fit after the game against Crystal Palace. He has that sort of mentality about him. And if he doesn't think that the club are matching his ambitions, where does that leave him? Because even though he's quite shy and retiring at times, you think to yourself, he's not stupid. I know people want to call him stupid, or the way he speaks as being a little bit childlike at times, but that's just his personality. I think bubbling away underneath all of that, he's a genius. He's a genius football player. He is, without question, injured at the moment, and he has been injured. And I think the fact he hasn't played the last 2 matches says everything you need to know. I question his ability in the last few weeks because you assume that when he's playing from the start, that he's okay and he's injury free, but clearly he's not. And I'm pleased that he's not played the last 2 matches because it means that there is an actual problem and they might be trying to fix it, or at least helping him recover to play in some bigger games down the line, i.e. Napoli midweek. I think that he'll play, and possibly Arsenal the week after. But I worry that if Chelsea were offered that sort of money, we would probably take it, because we're not in a position to say to Cole Palmer, do you know what, we can challenge next season, or the season after, or the season after that. He will be thinking, by the time Chelsea get their act together, I might be 28 and I'm over the hill. And that's just not what he wants to be as a football player. I think even though I believe he would play in his local park for free today, I also believe that he wants to win things. He's not content on just going, I'm a good football player and I'm happy just to mope around a bit like Matt Letizia did. You know, an absolute maverick of a player, world-class player, did things that no one else could do, but sort of liked his life in Southampton and didn't feel the need to move on and play for trophies. I don't see Cole Palmer as being that. He wants to win things. He wants to be in the England team for World Cups. He wants to be their talisman. I just don't believe we are in a position, the way we're going and the way we recruit players, is going to make him go, oh yeah, this is the place to be. And you look at Man City, who have just gone and bought Semenyo and Gay, and obviously other such players, like Donnarumma was late signing in the summer. And whether you think they're great signings or not, they're signings that show you've got ambition. And being linked with a youngster from France, and I'll never criticise this guy from France, by the way, because I don't know if it's going to happen in January. It looks like it's going to happen possibly in the summer, this Jeremy Jacquet signing, because he could be a good player. And I wouldn't criticise that guy because he could end up being world class. Who knows? I don't know. I'd never seen him play, so I can't comment. But like I said last week, it won't move the needle for him. And if you were Cole Palmer, I'll put it to you, Chris, if you were Cole Palmer and you had a decision to make whether or not you stayed at Chelsea and were paid a salary of £150,000 a week and they never went anywhere, or Man United or Man City or Liverpool or Real Madrid came in for you and either offered to double your wages or at least pay you part of what you're earning at Chelsea with some bonuses thrown in as well, would you move just to see what was on the other side of the coin? Because without real marquee signings in key areas of the pitch, we will forever be quite a good team. We'll play well in some games and we'll play terrible in other games. And our consistency meter will be up and down like a yo-yo. And my fear is that we've sort of overspent so much and we've sort of bought so badly at times and spent so much wasted cash on really poor players that is eventually going to bite us in the arse. We're going to have to sell one of our really top-end talents like Cole Palmer at a profit, certainly at a profit. But then you let that player go to a rival and you'd be forever thinking, what could have been with a player like him? And to be honest, the Cole Palmer situation, even though it isn't really a story as of yet, there are quite a few things at the club that are really disappointing me. But I think the one thing that just bites me so bad is this feeling that every player you sign has to be worth more money when you sell them than when you bought them. And clearly, we have got an abundance of players that we're going to lose money on. And we've spent millions and millions of pounds on them. Jamie Gittins is going to go for less money. Badia Shield is going to go for less money. Mikhailo Mudryk, we may never see that money ever again. And I just think to myself, what's the risk in paying 20, 25 million for a slightly older head, 29, 30-year-old centre-back with experience, or even you might get lucky and get a good free transfer. And even though there's no sell-on value really to that player, they might kick around the club for 3 seasons and help you develop. And I just think we've wasted all this cash on youngsters like it's okay. Of course, Jamie Gittins is going to be suddenly worth 80 million. Of course he's not. He's going to be worth pennies on the dollar. And if it meant you brought in a slightly older head with great experience and great ability to help you whilst you're not doing quite so well in certain areas of the field, it will only make your other assets worth even more money. Because if Chelsea suddenly bought 3 really shrewd, experienced signings next season, and Cole Palmer and Caicedo and Estêvão flourished because of it, well, I guarantee you, the £120 million I sort of mused earlier on for Cole Palmer might be worth 150, and your Estêvão signing that was maybe 30 with a few add-ons could be worth 100. And I just think that the bigger picture sometimes for Chelsea is missed, and putting a load of young, not average players, but young, inexperienced and fledgling stars who haven't had a career yet and hoping that they make the players around them play better is just nonsense. And the fact that other teams are prepared to go and spend money on experience, but we are the only club in the world that seems to be hell-bent on buying 17 and 18-year-olds is staggering. It really is staggering. Unless Chelsea can suddenly produce 4 or 5 players they've purchased or got through the academy and sell them for an enormous profit, then I will eat my words. But I just don't see how we are going to do that. I really don't see that. I suppose my question to Chris is, could you see a world in which Cole Palmer becomes disillusioned with this project, and in which case the knock-on effect that might have to other players like Caicedo, like Estêvão, and where would that leave the project? Because you would then find, I think, a lot of fans turning on the ownership by saying, you had a player in him and you didn't match his ambitions, and now you've sold him to a rival, you've lost your best player, and an English player at that, which is even more key, I think, for the fans to hold on to. Basically, all because you are so stubborn in this approach of flipping players for a few quid if you can get it. That to me just seems like an absolute nonsense. And yeah, I just wonder if one was to go, whoever it might be out of that lot really, how the others would feel, because I just get the sense that it may have a massive rippling effect throughout the club. But let me know what you think, Chris, and I'll see you next time.
Oh, what an interesting topic this is. Okay, let's cut to the chase. Cole Palmer, am I worried? And what would I do if I was him? I'm not worried, actually, at this stage about Palmer leaving. Joe can't give away his sources, but he does know. He knows people in the right places within the club, let's say that. And all the talk of Palmer being unhappy is just not true. And I think when you look at his body language around recent games and him looking unhappy, I think the truth is he's unhappy because he's not the Cole Palmer we know and love. And he's frustrated as much as anyone that he can't do what he wants to on the pitch. Very understandable. And like Joe said, I think very sensible actually from Mazzini and the team to rest him for a couple of games so we can hopefully get him back to the real Cole Palmer. Because when it comes to the business end of this season, that's if we're going to do anything of real significance, we are going to need, a proper Cole Palmer on the pitch. And we haven't really seen it now there were a couple of games earlier in the season, I think. So I don't want to say we haven't seen it since World Club Cup. Bayern Munich away, he was brilliant. But there's been a couple of flashes, but really we haven't seen a sustained performance for quite a while. So yeah, I'm not worried in that respect. And all the other talk coming out this week is that Chelsea do have, to quote Jose Mourinho, a set of untouchables within the group. They didn't name them, but I think the general consensus seems to be that the names on that list are obviously Cole Palmer, Moise Caicedo, Levi Colwill, and Estêvão, and maybe Enzo Fernandez, but I think that one's open to a bit more debate. But these are the players that really are not for sale. And it's football, it's business, it's sport. Every player has his price. I don't care who you are. Erling Haaland has a price. But realistically, I think the price for Cole Palmer would be a world record fee and probably 150 million plus. So the number of clubs that could offer that kind of money, I think, are very, very small. And who is the market for a Cole Palmer right now? I'm not sure, because I don't actually think even a Real Madrid could offer that level of money. And therefore, I don't think it's a conversation to be had right now. A little bit like when Kevin De Bruyne was at City, where obviously he wasn't looking to leave City because they were so good while he was there, but his value to City was so high that there wasn't really a market. And we joke and often get frustrated with the ridiculous contracts that Chelsea offer and the length of contracts, but in a situation like Cole Palmer, it's worth remembering he's still got, I think, 6 years left on his deal. So when it comes to situations like that, all of the cards are stacked very much in our favour. Now, I guess the other side of the card is, if you are Cole Palmer, what would you do? And I'll answer this in two sides. So the one is the more pragmatic view, which is, look, I said money talks from the club side earlier. It talks with players as well. And there are a lot of clubs out there who would probably quite happily double Cole Palmer's money because of Chelsea's current wage policy. And it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in. If someone comes along to you and says that I'll double your money, you're going to have a conversation, you take the call. So I think if that situation arises, there's nothing to say that the Cole wouldn't have to at least have the conversation, consider it. But as I said before, I just don't see Chelsea even allowing that situation to arise right now. From a football side, I think it's a little bit different. I think for people like Palmer and Enzo Fernandez and all these other guys and Caicedo, etc., I think this is probably the crux of your question really, Joe. Like, will they be frustrated by a lack of progress? And I think progress is the word. It's the most important thing, because the nature of the Chelsea model, project, whatever you want to call it, this kind of philosophy of signing incredible number of young players and frustrating us all as fans for the lack of just getting a couple of experienced heads in, all these kind of things. I think where the club can back it and say it's working, if you want, works if there is progress. So Pochettino's season, we effectively finished the season pretty well, losing in the League Cup final, of course, but it ended up qualifying through the league for the Europa League. Now, it's often forgotten that we actually did qualify for the Europa League, but then Man United won the FA Cup a week later against City, and then we got demoted into the Conference League, but effectively finished, 6th that year. There was progress. Things were moving in the right direction, and the remit the next year for Maresca was very clear, which was you have to show progress, go and qualify for the Champions League, go and win a trophy, and make progress. And obviously he he ticked those boxes. Got fourth in the end, Champions League qualification, obviously won the Conference League, and then the Brucey bonus was winning the Club World Cup. So that's progress. And I think players, would have loved that trip to America, obviously loved their big night against PSG, would have been excited this year playing the Champions League. Quite a few of those players for the first time. In Palmer's case, being the main man for the first time in the Champions League. So I don't see that there would be a frustration at that point that they're not seeing progress. And the weird thing about this season is, and I sort of said this to Joe off pod on Friday night and talking about what a big game I felt like Palace was and what a weird season it's been, is that I don't think any of us as Chelsea fans have particularly loved this season. I don't think we felt it's been brilliant, and I think there's been a lot of inconsistency across not only our team performances but within the players and spells. I talked about João Pedro earlier. He probably epitomises that almost better than anyone. He's had some really good moments, but some really bad spells as well. Almost with Pedro Neto is another where I think he's had some good moments this year, but he's having a really bad spell at the moment. And I think you could put that almost across the whole squad. But we are actually right up there. I think fourth until Man United beat Arsenal earlier. So, but in around at the top five of the league, we're still in all the competitions. We're still in the League Cup. It was the semi-final of the League Cup against Arsenal. We're still in the FA Cup. And obviously we will be in the knockout stage of the Champions League. So this whole season, whilst as fans, it's all felt a bit of a mess and frustrating. And obviously we've had a manager change. There's still a lot to play for. So I don't think we can call yet what this season will look like and how the players will feel. I think a lot of the players out there will fancy themselves and think, Champions League, who knows? The guy I know well, he goes to a lot of the away days, Harry, he's been saying all season, he's like, we're going to win the Champions League this year. I think league performance, probably thinks will be about where we are. And he just keeps saying, we're going to win the Champions League, I tell you. And it would be a very Chelsea thing to do. And I know, as silly as that sounds, number one, who knows? But number two, the players will fancy themselves, I think. The players will fancy themselves up against anyone. They've shown it in big games that we can perform. So the reason I'm saying all this is Cole Palmer will want to be fit, firing for the knockout stages of the Champions League. And we don't know whether that will be, depending on what happens against Napoli on Wednesday night, who, by the way, he lost 3-0 at Juventus going into the game on Wednesday, and will be desperate. They need a result on Wednesday because they need to stay in the Champions League. We're going to be in the Champions League one way or the other in the knockout stages. Who knows where this season goes for Chelsea? I think there's a lot to play for. And I think come the end of the season, I think people will take stock and we'll see where we're at. I don't see Cole Palmer leaving, as I said. I don't see it as an issue for us right now. They haven't sold any of the big players, to be fair. There's been a lot of ins and outs. The trading model is clear to see, but they've not sold any of the big players. And as much as we get frustrated, all of us, I think, with the number of trades that are done, it's clearly a deliberate business policy where Chelsea have decided that they can't compete with the Saudi riches. They can't compete commercially because of the stadium size and other factors with some of the big clubs out there, the other big clubs. And so doing this sort of trading model is the way for Chelsea to differentiate in the market and stay competitive. And I think in reality, that's how we have to look at a lot of the deals that Chelsea do. A lot of the players that we bring in is clearly for trading. Whether they'll play for the club, never, or a handful of times. Same like in a Murray Hutchinson, he signed for 5 million and then sell for 20 plus a 25%, whatever it was, sell on. I think Chelsea see that as our way to compete commercially with other clubs. Now, the shirt sponsor thing is a frustration of mine that we've talked about enough on the pod and just drives me mad and just seems commercially crazy. But I think that generally is the model. And I think you have to look at a lot of the trades that we do with that mindset and think, well, actually, this is just a player trade. I think one thing that Joe and I might do on maybe an international break on a window episode will be we'll go through all of the trades, the transfers, the trades that Chelsea have done in the last couple of years, and let's give them a score. Let's give you our thoughts on whether they've been a success or a failure. But I think within that, you have to put a separate category, which is they're a business trade, and they were never really meant to be for the team. they were just, this is a success, you know, they are done for the idea of making profit and staying competitive. Where I think that, what I think is different to that is obviously players that clearly bought for the first team just haven't worked out. And if I pick out two, because I think they're the obvious ones to look at, Badia, Shiel and Disassi, bought for a lot of money from Monaco. I think it's 70 odd million for the pair of them between them. And they've just been, in my mind, a disaster. And you think 70 million, what you could get for that? I mean, you could just about get any centre back in the world, couldn't you? The absolute best in the world for that. And Chelsea spent 70 on those two, and both have been a kind of unmitigated disaster, really. But what I would say about those two is I don't think that they were bought for the idea of profit. I don't think they were bought on the idea of a business model. I think they were just bad signings. And I looked into it a little bit, actually, that I think the average percentage of successful signing is about 42% or something. And I think that something like the Liverpool model, which was really, you know, given a lot of credit when they had that really good spell, famed for their data model and stuff, I think they got up to about 60 or 65% success rate. But the average is, you know, anything around 50% is success. And as fans, probably every fan of their own club is guilty of saying we buy badly at times when you're not doing well on the pitch, you know. And in reality, I think probably have wasted a lot of money in certain areas. I mean, those two I've just mentioned, Mudryk, who Joe mentioned earlier, just haven't worked out. And it's a lot of money spent. And Gittins, unfortunately, and Delap might well be added to that list. Gittins at the moment, as we said, it just doesn't look anywhere near right. But I don't think that he was bought for profit. I don't think Chelsea spend that sort of money on a player thinking we can turn a profit on this guy. I think they generally thought he would be a difference maker and be an upgrade on what we had. It just hasn't worked out. And I think the true test, really, of the model, of the ownership, of the sporting directors is what they do with those guys in the summer. I think if we have a summer where we see a big change around in those guys, Badiashile, I mean, Disassi, to be fair, they are clearly trying to get rid of. So then, you know, he's not part of the squad anymore. Badiashile, Tosin, if we see those guys moved on, if we see that they'll make a quick call on Gittins and maybe look for a loan to get its value back up or a permanent sale. And again, Chelsea are being linked to, you know, right-footed attackers to probably come in and compete on that area. And we've got Quenda coming in as well. I think if Chelsea's showing intent to move people on quickly that don't work out, then actually, I don't think we can criticise it. I mean, you're not going to get every signing right. And there are a lot of clubs after Liam Delap. A lot of big clubs would have taken him. And I think I'd be a lot of clubs who are probably quite surprised he's been as bad as he has for Chelsea. And who knows, it's early days, he might turn it around. But yeah, I think it's a big few months for not only Chelsea and everything we've got left to play for in the league, but for a few of those players like Delap and Gittins and a couple of others to prove that they are good enough, or hopefully we see them get moved on. So yeah, in answer to the question, I'm not worried yet. I think if any of the big players were to go, I think the one that is likely is probably Enzo Fernandez for the reasons that we've talked about in the past. But who knows? He was getting his name sung loud and clear in front of the Chelsea fans at Palace today. He clearly loves the club. There is a real connection there. He's certainly won me over in the last 12 months or so. I think he's been excellent this season. He's been one of our most consistent players, constantly delivering goals and assists. And who knows? But I think, again, if he was to go, he would be the first. He'd be the first real big money player that Chelsea have sold. And I think they'd only do it if they got a significant amount of money, close to what we paid for him, and if they had good intention to go and spend it in you know, a similar sort of level replacement, and maybe even someone who they feel like can take us to the next level. So, yeah, not concerned at the moment, but as I said right at the start, progress is all important. Chelsea have to be moving forwards, and it's going to be a massive into the season, a real shootout to see if we can do that. But we've got to keep the faith. And as they sang famously at Selhurst Park, every little thing's going to be all right. We'll be back on Thursday to talk about that big Champions League night. And here's hoping it's a good one. Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.